morning. We are here with Evan Tracey on the Friday Fireside. This episode will air on Friday, March 8th, May 8th, not March 8th. And Evan Tracey is with the National Media, I always have to read this, National Media Research Planning and Placement, LLC, shortened to National Media. Evan, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you. We are making our way through all this, and making our way through is part of what we're going to talk about today for what your organization is doing and what it's planning. But first of all, give us a sense. The shorthand is National Media. Tell us a little bit about National Media.
Yeah. Well, we're a full-service agency. We do a lot of buying. We specialize in public affairs, political. So we've got a full slate. We touch all the different communication touch points for most of our clients. But we're obviously trying to stay busy here in this new world.
I get that. Now, when I've heard you speak before, you have spoken mostly on and about television. I assumed you also work with digital and everything else, but one of the questions that we have right now is that local broadcast television audiences are up, especially news, but the buy-in is pretty low, and I suspect you're part of the buying being low. You're probably not spending a lot right now, are you?
Well, yes and no. I mean, this is not a time where you would expect to have a lot of political, especially in a presidential year. This is usually that lull between when you have the nominee on the party out of power. Obviously, we have an incumbent president. So this would actually be the time where you would see a lot of kind of small buys, mostly to try and define the other guy. There's still some special elections, still some primaries, so there's definitely activity. I don't think politics has slowed down at all because of the COVID-19 situation. I think it's, this was sort of a natural lull that you would have in a presidential cycle. You would have a very big first quarter with the presidential primaries, and that didn't disappoint with people like Bloomberg in there. I would probably say that, on the Democrat side, their primary ended probably a little sooner than it would have, because I think once the pandemic hit, a lot of Democratic voters, thought the idea of a Bernie Sanders maybe wasn't as cool as it was, and they went for the guy with some gray hair that reminded them of Obama. And
hey, gray hair.
I think that's probably, well, I'm starting to find mine too. My barber is I'd give probably one of my kids for a barber right now. Although one of my kids wants to be a barber, so maybe I'll give him his first client.
There you go.
But I think in the short term, this is not a big time for political advertising. I think what would have happened is still happening. There was probably a bit of a pause while people figured it all out. But if there was a kind of a part of the ecosystem of advertising that was probably best positioned for this COVID-19 pandemic, it would be political, because we're used to working in kind of chaotic times, and all of our clients are generally sort of virtual corporations. So, the idea of being spread out and the idea of not knowing what you're doing today, tomorrow, is not all that different for us. So I think in a lot of ways, it's been business as usual. I mean, we've had to overcome some, location things where we've had to obviously relocate a lot of our staff, and a lot of our staff is working from home. But I think most of this has been pretty seamless, and I would give the seller side, an A for their responsiveness. So yeah, I think that, look, this is a great time for us in the sense that you've got a lot of eyeballs, and a lot of them are on TV. And we'll see how that changes as we gravitate into the fall. I mean, I think that's going to be the biggest part of our job going forward, is how much of this is now and how much of this is, at least for the foreseeable future. So, a lot of times you look at last year for this year, and you look at 2 years ago for 2 years from now. And, a lot of that stuff, you got to have to throw it out. I think it's going to come back to a lot of data combined with instinct.
So let's talk about how much is a lot. There were some forecasts for this year's spending that we're talking about a total of $6.5 billion all told. But those forecasts, the last one I saw was from March 2nd or so, before this all sort of went quiet. How much is how much? How much are you thinking is going to be spent now when the floodgates open up? And floodgates might actually be exactly the right word for that.
Well, as an old history major, it's appropriate that this is the fireside chat, because I think FDR's goal with the fireside chat was to offer hope in desperate times.
Yep.
I think that from a political standpoint, you're probably not going to see a big decrease in advertising spending. I can make you a case where I think you'll see an increase in advertised spending. That being that I'm not hearing that fundraising is particularly slowed down. I think that, the large donors are still out there writing checks. As a Democrat colleague of mine or friend of mine said that, Democrat money will be there because Trump will still be there. I think you've got a lot of, there's going to be a lot at stake here when you come into the next Congress. Everything, from healthcare legislation at Supreme Courts to kind of the direction of the country coming out of, hopefully, this pandemic. So I don't think there's going to be a big drop off on fundraising. So what I do think we're looking at is a lot of campaigns that aren't traveling, they aren't doing rallies, they're not spending the money that they would normally spend in the function of the campaigns, which means I think a lot of that money is going to be converted into more advertising, and that's across all screens and platforms. The downside scenario that I might give is that with conventions moving, I think the Democrats would like to keep this as compressed an election nationally as they can. But I don't know that does anything to slow down advertising. Like I said, I think all the things that campaigns can't do are banking dollars that could ultimately be converted into more advertising. And look, the other thing that we're learning right now from a digital side of this is that having your own distribution channel is really important in these times. We're hearing anecdotally campaigns that are getting tens of thousands of views on Facebook Lives, which they wouldn't have gotten normally. But since you have a lot of people at home, especially elected officials, where people are looking to get information, even though you've got national news 24/7, you don't have local news for 24/7. So when the governor of Virginia, for instance, talks about, reopening the state and the economy, really the only place you can find that is online. So, I think this is where campaigns are realizing, we're starting to figure out what social media is good for. It's better than, cat videos. They've gotten this situation where they can go out and build their own distribution channels and talk directly to voters. But that, again, that's not only impacting digital, that's going to impact everything.
So let's talk about a little bit about digital versus broadcast. I remember you speaking on a panel not long ago about local broadcast and trying to motivate viewers to, I believe your 3 steps were: 1, sign up for the newsletter or go online; number 2, donate; and number 3, go to a rally. No rallies now. Sorry.
Yeah, no rallies.
No rallies.
Well, there's online rallies.
Are there online rallies? Are there really?
There will be. If they're not, there will be. There's a lot of people experimenting with what they can do online. I think that you're going to see a lot of squares in the Zoom boxes for some of these candidates.
Oh, good heavens! That sounds a little terrifying to watch. But be that as it may. Okay, now. Local broadcast and local cable, you can get right into the local race, get to the local viewers, move them the way you want to move them. What about, and I have friends at, Viacom, CBS, who now own Pluto, which is one of a number of ad-supported VOD services. Are you using those kinds of services? Are you looking to use those kind of services as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're using look, this is going to be a video election any way you slice it. Anybody who's selling video will have a customer probably in the political world. You are in an environment right now where, again, streaming's through the roof, right? I mean, OTT is through the roof. So any screen, any video that's going to be out there is going to be, sought after, especially ones that come with, a built-in voter demographic. And I think you're seeing candidates right now, if you look at ads that are coming out of the Maine Senate race, for instance, and some of these other, races that are going on right now, everybody's adapting to this new world order. I mean, you have candidates that are doing ads like you and I are doing this talk. I mean, they're talking into their Zoom boxes. They're going to adapt, and some of this is going to stick around. But look, if you have video, it's targeted, if you can deliver a audience that one of these campaigns, is desperately trying to talk to, again, you always kind of start with your base. And then you work your way back to those independent, undecided voters. And, there's a lot of talk about targeting, and targeting is important, but at the end of the day, it's still, a business where we spend the most amount of money on media and advertising when we have the least amount of what would be available customers, or in this case, available voters. No other business looks like this, where your available customer line goes like this and your ad spend goes like that. Yeah. Right? And that won't change. And again, if you get a compressed election, you're going to have, you could have anywhere from, 12 to 14 states, and you could have as few as 6 or 7 states where the presidential election is going to be decided. So you're going to kind of run out of ways to buy up TV and cable in those states. And you're going to have to look to a lot of the OTT connected TV. Radio is going to be someplace that I think you're going to see a lot of dollars flow into radio, especially if people stop commuting on public transportation. They're going to be back in their cars listening to a lot more radio again. So there's going to be a lot of money to spend, and it's going to be in some very compressed places, and the calendar is going to work against you, and the options of where you're going to be able to buy is going to work against you. But we, unlike other businesses, don't say, well, if we can't spend it this quarter, we'll spend it next quarter. I mean, we're constantly in a one-day of sale business.
Yep. When you need it tonight, you need it tonight, period.
Yeah, so that's going to open up a lot of options. We might sponsor face masks. Who knows?
Oh, my heavens. So now, all right. So last question, and we've done terrifically well on the timing. I have spoken to some people who are suggesting that just about the time you start writing checks is about the time that retail and consumer packaged goods, automotive, hell, even travel start coming back. And for a period of time, 2 months, 3 months, it's going to be somewhat of a seller's market. Are you expecting to pay more because of that?
I think, look, there's going to be a lot of pressure on inventory. I mean, when you could have the perfect storm here, because all of those businesses you mentioned are going to be trying to get customers back in their restaurants and their stores and their hotels and on their airplanes and on their cruise ships. And, if the trends keep going the way they're going, it's all going to sort of collide with the fall campaign, and you could have a lot of pressure on inventory. I think it's also going to be interesting where you're going to have kind of one group in the corporate advertiser space really talking about looking ahead. And there's certainly going to be a segment of these political advertisers that are going to be looking back and Monday morning quarterbacking. So the messages that are going to be going out could be at a very much conflicting nature. So I think it's going to be a challenge both on the buying side, but also on the creative side.
Well, you have helped me redefine the reason why I so do love this business. There's always a problem to solve, and there's always a challenge, and it's moving fast.
Never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment. Well, listen, we've about used our time. Evan Tracey from National Media, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, and thanks for doing this.
And I suspect that there will be some media company staff meetings watching this video sometime Friday afternoon. Take good care. Thank you, sir.
Good luck to them. All on Zoom, right? Thanks.